What's going on, guys? It's Woohoot, and today I'm going to be talking about my concerns with the new Combat Arms matchmaking system. Today is November the 6th, 2016, and I'm happy to tell you that matchmaking will be coming to Combat Arms in the very near future. As many of you guys have seen, Nexon will be introducing two different forms of matchmaking. One is going to be casual, one's going to be competitive. Like many of you guys, I'm really excited for these new features, but some of them bring up some concerns with the way the game will be played. Let's talk about casual matchmaking for a second. As you guys know, casual matchmaking will most likely allow all weapons to be used when you're playing. This means that guns like the Maxis SG, Orthus, Duels, even the Flash Nades will most likely be allowed while playing in casual matchmaking. I know some of you guys will probably say, hold up, wait a minute, the players that are using these broken items are not likely going to be staying in your bracket because they're going to be moved up for better kills and more kills, and we're not going to run into them very often. And that's true and all, but keep in mind, even in pub matches that exist today in the current servers, there are players that bring in Flash Nades and Maxis SGs, and they aren't very good. And even though they aren't very good, it's still very annoying to play against players that use these items. And that's my main concern. It's the experience for the majority of players that will probably be ruined when they're playing in casual matchmaking. If we take a look at what's going on in CA right now before matchmaking has been implemented, one thing we'll notice is that most of these custom rooms have some sort of weapons restriction. And that's how players, or the majority of players, enjoy CA. They like to play with some sort of weapons restrictions. Now, we know that not everyone who uses a Max or an Orthus or Flash Nades or AR-15s are going to be, great with them. But the problem is, it's not the fact that they're great with them, it's the fact that a lot of players just don't enjoy playing against these weapons. So what does this mean for the majority of CA players who are interested in matchmaking, but do not want to be inundated with all of the OP weapons and all the OP items that Nexon offers? Well, it means several different things, and I feel like the majority would probably go into a matchmaking game feeling that they have a good shot, and then they run into a couple of players who are using some of these OP weapons. Now, granted, these guys will probably not be in the same game the next round, or a few rounds from now when they get bumped up, but the fact is, it's just not enjoyable playing even bad players with some of these weapons, simply because it's not fun to get shot with an SG from across the map. It's one of those things where Nexon should have done a balance a long time ago, should have created some nerfs for some of these weapons a long time ago, but have not yet, and now I think it's going to come back and haunt them in the future. Now, if Nexon goes and becomes proactive and starts making a few nerfs for some of these weapons and balance them out a little bit more, they might be more readily accepted in matchmaking. But as of right now, I feel like casual matchmaking will probably have some hurdles to overcome when it gets implemented, and one of these hurdles is the lack of interest once the whole hype is worn off. And in reality, I really hope that I'm wrong. I really hope that matchmaking does make a positive change for the CA community. But I also feel like first impressions are the most important. So if you lose the player interest right in the beginning, you're going to be having a much harder time to try to grab that interest back once players already have a preconceived notion of what matchmaking in CA is all about. Now, going forward into competitive matchmaking, I feel like competitive matchmaking has a really good shot in turning CA into a real relevant esport. However, right now, from what I understand, PCM is the format that competitive matchmaking will use. And as much as I love PCM, and I do play PCM from time to time, it's just not a very popular game mode. The majority of CA players do not invest their time in the PCM, and to them it's almost like a foreign format, even though it's really the basis of what Combat Arms is all about before all the NX gear and all the NX weapons were introduced. Right now in the CA community, there is only a handful of players that actually play PCM regularly. The majority of us, we like to play with a wider assortment of weapons and a wider assortment of gear options. And I think that's what competitive matchmaking should be more geared towards. I'm not saying inundate it with all of the NX OP items, and I'm not saying allow maxes and duels, but what I think should be more of a balance in the middle, where you're not really having a pure PCM kind of a game format where you only are allowed to play with the 10 or 20 weapons that PCM allows, but maybe allow everyone to use any of the GP items that are in the game. And that way players, when they come into competitive matchmaking, they aren't completely turned off by the lack of choices they have. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably cursing my name and saying that's never going to work, and you guys are probably huge supporters of ESL and Go for CA and all these competitive leagues, and I don't want to step on you guys. I think that what you're saying makes absolute sense. We do need to keep a balance within the game, but keep in mind, Combat Arms is not like, you know, CSGO or some of the other games where things were built on a very balanced platform. You know, Nexon created Combat Arms with one of its biggest marketing hypes of having not millions, but hundreds of weapons. And unlike CSGO, it's not a game where it's restricted to only 10 or 20 weapons. And that's what players have been accustomed to for the last couple of years. They're used to having that variety. They're used to having that choice. They want to go into a match and say, okay, if this weapon isn't working for me, I can pick something else. Or if I don't like to play with something, I like to play with something else. Now, with competitive matchmaking, I understand you have to keep a balance. However, you can also create a fun environment for the majority of players. And if you have more people participating in competitive matchmaking, it will actually get a lot more attention, and maybe these leagues will actually start picking it back up. Now, maybe you guys can work out something where you're allowing more stuff into competitive matchmaking, or maybe you can try to change the format so that way people don't really feel like they're being forced into a very small hole. Either way, moving forward, Nexon needs to keep in mind that they need to cater to the majority of their player base. If they decide to alienate everyone who likes to use NX weapons or alienate everyone that likes PCM, it's not going to work out very well. And the majority of players in Combat Arms are not one or the other. It's usually somebody that falls in between. Somebody who likes to play PCM once in a blue moon, and somebody who likes to run around with a Maxis shotgun once in a blue moon. But the whole point is, if you alienate the majority of players and you go to one extreme, then a lot of players are going to be turned off by that feature. And I feel like if you want traction, if you want the player support, you really need to build a format that everyone can kind of relate to, and no one, the majority will not be pissed off. But right now I feel like with the implementation of PCM into competitive matchmaking, and that being the only format, I feel like that's going to be a very restricted process, and I feel like a lot of players are not going to express a lot of interest after a given time. So going forward, let's see what Nexon does. I really hope they put something out there that's really unique, that's really cool. I know they're trying to emulate a lot of what CS:GO does, but I also feel like they should do some things, that are more unique to Combat Arms and makes Combat Arms what it is today. Anyways, enough of my rambling. That concludes our commentary of the day. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like what you heard, hit a thumbs up and hit subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, please leave a comment in the bottom and I'll try to reply back to you as soon as possible. If you have any ideas or comments, please feel free to express them in the video below or try to post your ideas in the forum. Either way, I appreciate your time. This is Woohoot, and I'm out.